And the ledger lines were like little semicircles, and sometimes an F, which is 3 ledger lines, would be higher than an A, which is 4 ledger lines, you know, and we had to deal with all that. It was like chicken scratchings.
When we got to the mid-'80s, about 10, 11 years after you had already gone to overseas, you decided to come back to the States.
Right.
You ended up in Los Angeles. So what was the catalyst that brought you back here?
Okay, that's a wonderful question because, you know, London was a phenomenal place to live. But there are 2 really big drawbacks to London. First is the weather. It's really dreadful. I mean, seriously, people talk about, you know, gray old England, and it really is. I've always wanted to live in Southern California my whole life. And when I did the arrangement of the Happy Birthday variations for Milstein's 80th birthday, and I went to New York to play it, I met Glenn Dictoro, who I've known since I'm 15 also. And Glenn used to be out here in California. He was concertmaster of the LA Phil for a while. And then Zubin Mehta took him to New York to be concertmaster of the the New York Phil. And Glenn was there, and he said to me, you know, what are you doing in London? He said, why are you staying there? You go to Los Angeles, you'll be like a #1 guy out there. So I thought, well, you know, I do have some contacts because many composers that I work with in London work in Los Angeles also. And I thought I could ask them, like Bill Conti was one of them, and Bruce Broughton and a few others, John Barry. When you do work out there, would you request that I be in your sessions? And they said, of course, if you can move there, just let us know. So in the year preceding that, starting in 1984, I started making contacts through Glenn, who told me these are a few very powerful people you should meet. One of them was a man named Sid Sharp. Sid Sharp was a very big studio player out. He was the king of record dates, and he was a violinist. And Sid also, like my friend David Katz in London, loved great violin playing. He really appreciated it. So I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to send Sid, every time I make a recording in London, which was considerably many times, recitals, doing recitals and BBC broadcasts and things like that, I'm going to send him recordings of the stuff I'm doing. And then I'm going to send him the recording of the record that I made for CBS. And little did I know that what Sid was doing, although when I came here, he didn't necessarily hire me because he had people that were in his group that depended on him. But he talked me up to people. I mean, he played my recordings for them, the Happy Birthday particularly, which I'm very proud of. It's a really good representation of how I play. And when I got here in Los Angeles, I moved in March of '85. It was like I'm the new fast gun in town.
Yeah, I tell you though, it's a great story because it's like the perfect story showing people how networking, knowing some composers, knowing the right person, sending your information, making contact, and before you ever got here, you already had a reputation built up.
Yes, and that was before any internet or social networking that we could
right.
do. It had to be done by letters. That was it, post or phone calls, but phone calls were difficult. So
when the Hollywood Bowl Orchestra came together, you were given the concertmaster position of
that was an amazing coincidence for me, because a contractor here by the name of Jules Chaikin, who was a big record date guy, and I worked with him in England, strangely enough, and that's why I was able to work with him here. He saw me on a session, and he cut out an article from the Times, and he said, you know what, look at this article. It's about a new orchestra they're reforming. They're going to resuscitate an orchestra that was called the Hollywood Bowl Symphony back in the 1950s. And they're going to reorganize it again under the auspices of the LA Phil, and this would be a perfect job for you. The conductor is a guy named John Mauceri, who I didn't know at the time. So I went back home to Kay and I said, you know what, this is exactly the kind of, I never wanted to be in an orchestra. That's one of the reasons I stayed in freelance, because I didn't like the idea of having to be with the same conductor all the time, or even if there were guest conductors, what if I didn't like the guy and you have to be there for it, plus repertoire that I don't want to play. At least with the studios, I'm in and out of it. If I hate the music, that's it. It's the day's gone and I'm finished with it, you know?
Yeah, right.
But the Hollywood Bowl Orchestra was only a seasonal thing. It was going to go from middle of June through September. So I thought, well, the summertime, it's okay. I thought to myself, this would be a great job for me, but how do I even go about finding about it? I wrote a letter to Mount Cherry, and then I never sent it. I wrote it, putting myself out there saying I've done this, I've done that, and I thought, no, you're not going to do that. That's boastful and stupid, and I'm not going to do it. And as luck would have it, the contractor they decided to have was a percussionist with the LA Chamber Orchestra named Kenny Watson. And Kenny Watson was going to recruit people that he liked from the LA studios to be in the orchestra. And he originally decided on a group of players that he had a lot of respect for, who were members of the Los Angeles Quartet. The Angeles Quartet, I believe, not Los Angeles, Angeles Quartet. Problem was, they were paying a dirt cheap rate. I mean, an insulting rate. Seriously insulting. And Kathy, who never was really commercially minded at all, she was a very fine classical violinist, but didn't really enjoy commercial music or never had a good sense for it because she didn't like it. She immediately turned it down. So then Kenny asked me. And I thought, oh my God, this is what I wanted. I said, of course. And I discussed it. I also asked for a lot more money than they were giving. But they said, look, this is experimental. You have to just give us this first few seasons to see how we're going to do. And I'm sorry that the rate's going to be like that, but you might enjoy doing it and it'll be good exposure for you. And as it turned out, it was very good, but the money was not good at all.
Now, I know that you were telling me that today you came back from a recording session and you've now done, did you say it was 1,849?
That's it, today, 1849 today.
1849 today. So what
just
is
motion pictures, not anything else, just motion pictures, yeah.
That's amazing. So where do you find the passion with that many film scores behind you? Where do you find the passion to keep going back into the studio? And I mean, I've worked with you and seen how much you enjoy what you do. You keep going back with all that passion. How do you do that?
No, because I enjoy I really enjoy the challenge of it, first of all. You're coming in and you're not seeing this music before, and it's written, especially if it's a great composer. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are times I come in there and it's, because we're playing sound effects, aleatoric stuff, which is very ungratifying and unpleasant to do.
Right.
And not using the instrument for what it's made. But it's balanced out plenty of times by this great stuff and challenging music, which I really love. And we have some really great film composers. I mean, seriously, it's exciting to come and play.
For somebody that may be watching that doesn't know a lot about how these sessions work, you made a comment about how you come in and there's the challenge of you haven't seen the music before. Speak briefly about what that is, that when you walk in, have you seen the music before? How quickly are you playing at a level that they're recording, and so on and so forth?
Okay, so let me just start from now, which is very different from when it was maybe 10 years ago to 15 years to 20 and 30 years ago. Now, we're very, very lucky because the copyists, and there are only about 2 or 3 really great companies of copyists in LA, but they're fabulous. They now put the music up in PDF maybe a day or 2 before, so you can actually look at the music and scout through it and see what's going to be challenging or not, that you think you should look at. Everybody, I still don't like to do that because I love the challenge of coming in and sight reading. But 10 years ago, you were looking at great music printed up beautifully, and you had to just come in and sight read it. You usually have a run through, and then they start putting the red light on, and there'll be rough takes and they'll just go back and redo it again. But they pretty much start recording after the first run through. You've got to know how to play these octatonic scales, and you've got to know how to do that. A lot of chromatic scales. You've got to just be able to zip it in. You've got to know how to find the notes quickly up high. And your rhythmic security has to be very strong. 20 years ago, we didn't have, or maybe more than 20, we didn't have the computerized printout of the music. And we had the copyists who would write it out by hand. And to the credit of most copyists, they were very well done. But there was a couple of different studio copyists that really didn't copy well, and the ledger lines were like little semicircles, and sometimes an F, which is 3 ledger lines, would be higher than an A, which is 4 ledger lines, and we had to deal with all that. It was like chicken scratchings.
Thank you for watching. For more great videos, subscribe to the Maestro Fox YouTube channel. To learn more about the Maestro, visit StevenAllenFox.com.